So, good morning, everyone. My name is Arafat, and I teach history on the textbook platform. So, in this session, let us spend some time discussing on a ruler of medieval Indian history, that is Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So, the topic of today's discussion is Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So, once again, a very good morning, everyone. So, this topic is important. At times, questions were asked from this particular topic, particularly in the prelims stage of this examination. So the possibility of asking questions from this topic in the mains examination is very remote, but definitely there is a possibility of a question being asked from this particular topic, at least in prelims stage of a UPSC examination. And therefore, let us spend some time discussing about this personality of medieval Indian history, that is Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So basically, Muhammad bin Tughlaq is a Delhi Sultanate ruler. Might be knowing the Delhi Sultanate uh, ruled India between 1206 to 1526 AD. Point. Just a minute. So the Delhi Sultanate ruled India between 1206 to 1526 AD. That is for about 320 years. And this Delhi Sultanate was ruled by 5 different dynasties. It was ruled, the Delhi Sultanate was ruled by 5 different dynasties. The first one happened to be the slave dynasty. Right? The first one happened to be the slave dynasty, which ruled between 1206 to 1290. The second one happened to be the Khalji dynasty, ruled between 1290 to 1320. And the third dynasty happened to be the Tughlaq dynasty, ruled between 1320 to 1412 AD. Then the fourth dynasty happened to be Sayyid dynasty, ruled between 1414 to 1451. And the fifth is we have a dynasty called the Lodhi dynasty, ruled between 1451 to 1526. So altogether, the Delhi Sultanate was ruled by 5 different dynasties. These are the dynasties. That's the point. So the point is, the ruler of today's discussion, that is Muhammad bin Tughlaq, belonged to the third dynasty, that is the Tughlaq dynasty. That's the point. So take a look at the territory ruled by the Tughlaqs. So basically, the whole region marked in pink came under the direct control of the Tughlaqs. This whole region marked in pink came under the direct control of the Tughlaqs. That's the point. But the point is, the Tughlaqs came to power in 1320 AD. So by the time they came to power, by that time itself, the whole of northern part of India up till Narmada was under the direct control of the Delhi Sultans. That's the point. Let me repeat this point once again. Just repeat this point once again. So I told you Delhi Sultanate was ruled by 5 different dynasties. So I showed you the map of India. So I showed you the territory that was under the direct control of the Tughlaqs. This entire pink marked region came under the direct control of the Tughlaqs. But Tughlaqs came to power in 1320 AD. Tughlaqs came to power in 1320 AD. So by the time the Tughlaqs came to power, the whole of northern part of India up till the river Narmada was already under the control of Delhi Sultans. Means that the Khaljis themselves, the Khaljis were already the rulers of northern part of India. So it was during Khalji's time. So we have, let me make a reference to one Khalji dynasty ruler. We have one Khalji dynasty ruler by name Alauddin Khalji. Alauddin Khalji. So his one, Alauddin Khalji, was in power between 1296 to 1316 AD. So Alauddin Khilji ruled for about 20 years between 1296 to 1316 AD. So it was during the time period of Alauddin Khilji that most of northern part of India, is most of the northern part of India, this entire region was occupied, well, came under the control of the Khaljis. So it was Alauddin Khalji who occupied this whole of northern part of India and brought entire northern part of India under the direct control of the Delhi Sultans. This is what happened. It was during Alauddin Khalji's time period, even invasions were carried out on the South Indian territories. Point is, even when Alauddin Khalji was alive, during his rule itself, invasions were carried out even on the South Indian territory. So, for example, invasion was carried on the Maharashtra. Show you here. This entire region was also invaded. This entire red marked region was also invaded during the time period of Alauddin Khilji. So, in fact, even the South Indian territories, the South Indian kingdoms that were in power were defeated, but Alauddin Khilji did not annex the South Indian territories to the Delhi Sultanate. Let me once again explain you this particular point. Alauddin Khilji ruled between 1296 to 1316 AD. It was during his time period most of northern part of India came under the direct control of the Delhi Sultans. So after occupying whole of North India, Alauddin Khilji even started invading South India. So during this invasion, even the South Indian rulers were defeated, but Alauddin Khilji did not annex the South Indian territories to Delhi Sultanate. Alauddin Khilji did not annex the South Indian territories to Delhi Sultanate. This was because Alauddin Khilji was a very pragmatic ruler. Alauddin Khilji was a very pragmatic ruler. He knew very well that controlling South Indian territories all the way from Delhi would be very difficult, because having control or complete control over the faraway territories located in South India all the way from Delhi would be very difficult. So therefore, the point is Alauddin Khilji uh, Mr. Pandey, there is absolutely no reason. Basically, the rulers first they began occupying those regions that were easier for them to occupy. In the Kashmir region being, uh, the terrain, the route to reach Kashmir was very difficult, and therefore that prevented uh, the the Muslim rulers, particularly Alauddin Khilji, going all the way up to Kashmir. There is absolutely no reason. The only reason is the problem of terrain, because uh, to reach Kashmir is not that easy, because because of the undulating terrain, because of the mountainous region. Therefore, the Muslim rulers did not initially try to occupy Jammu and Kashmir. But in course of time, during the Mughal time period, in fact, even Jammu and Kashmir was invaded, and gradually even Jammu Kashmir began to be occupied. The point. So the whole point is Alauddin Khilji happened to be a very, very pragmatic ruler. He deliberately did not annex the South Indian territories to Delhi Sultanate. Basically, he converted the South Indian territories into tribute paying states. He converted basically this whole South Indian territories into tribute paying states, otherwise called as Samanta kingdom. Samanta kingdoms or subordinate kingdoms. Anything is fine. Tribute paying states, Samanta kingdoms or subordinate kingdoms. So basically, the defeated rulers of South India were returned back their kingdom on the condition that they should remain as subordinates to the Delhi Sultans. So basically, Alauddin Khilji, after defeating the South Indian rulers, returned their kingdom back to them on the condition that these rulers shall merely remain as the subordinates of Delhi Sultans. So why did Alauddin Khilji take this particular step? He took this step because he was a very practical ruler. He was a pragmatic ruler. He knew very well that controlling South India all the way from Delhi would be difficult. That's the point. So he was a very pragmatic ruler. Now come to the topic of the personality of today's discussion, that is Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So the whole point is, by the time Muhammad bin Tughlaq came to power, whole of North India was already under the direct control of Delhi Sultans. Because after the end, take a look at this dynasty once again. After the end of the Khalji dynasty, the Tughlaq dynasty came to power. So by the time the Tughlaqs came to power, the whole of North India was already under the direct control of Delhi Sultans. The South Indian territory was under the indirect control of Delhi Sultans. The South Indian territory was already under the indirect control of the Delhi Sultan. The point. Come to Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Just a minute. Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So this Muhammad bin Tughlaq is a Tughlaq dynasty ruler, and he ruled for about 26 years between 1325 to 1351. 1325 to 1351. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq is undoubtedly one of the most controversial rulers of medieval Indian period. Muhammad bin Tughlaq is undoubtedly one of the controversial rulers of the medieval Indian period. He was a man of knowledge. He had a lot of knowledge. He was a well-read man, but he lacked wisdom. Undoubtedly, he was a man of knowledge, but not of wisdom. That's the point. He was very intelligent. He was very ambitious. So during his rule, he came up with a couple of experiments. That is, the point is, Muhammad bin Tughlaq came up with a few experiments. Most of his experiments ended up in a failure. The experiments failed not because the idea was bad. The experiments failed because of poor implementation. Let me repeat this point once again. Muhammad bin Tughlaq is undoubtedly considered as one of the controversial personalities of medieval Indian history. He is considered controversial because of the various experiments he had carried out during his period. So the point is, he carried the experiments. The point is, he carried a couple of experiments. Most of his experiments ended up in a failure. The experiments failed not because the idea itself was bad. In fact, the idea behind most of his experiments was very good, in fact. But most of his experiments failed because of improper implementation. So his experiments caused great hardships to the people. It also resulted in a loss to the treasury. It also resulted in a great loss to the treasury. And it is said that the failure of his experiments is considered to be one of the reasons for the eventual loss or decline of the Tughlaq rule. Let me repeat this point once again. His experiments is said to have caused great hardships to the people. His experiments also resulted in a lot of loss, financial loss to the treasury. And it is said that the failure of his experiments is regarded as one of the key reasons for the eventual decline of the Tughlaq rule. So the failure of his experiments is held responsible for the decline of the Tughlaq rule. So now let us understand what his experiments were. Why did he come up with the experiments? how did he implement, and what were the reason for its failures. Let us understand all of them one after the other. So we are now focusing on the experiments carried out during the time period of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So I am focusing on this point because there is a possibility of question being asked from this particular personality, that is Muhammad bin Tughlaq. At the point I told you, undoubtedly he was a man of knowledge, but he lacked wisdom. Most of the experiments which he had undertaken ended up in great disasters. It had resulted in a great financial strain to his kingdom. So it those experiments are said to have caused great hardships to the people, and ultimately the failure of his experiments are held to be one of the reason for the eventual fall of the Tughlaq rule. Now let us understand the experiments carried out during Muhammad bin Tughlaq's time period. One is a change of capital, and he carried out this experiment in 1326. So, by the way, Muhammad bin Tughlaq came to power in 1325 AD, remained in power till 1351 AD. So, 2 years after coming to power, Muhammad bin Tughlaq changed his capital. So, the capital of Delhi Sultanate was Delhi, but in 1327, Muhammad bin Tughlaq shifted his capital to Daulatabad. This is Daulatabad. So during the ancient times, this Daulatabad was referred to as Devagiri. So this Devagiri, after shifting of a capital from Delhi to Devagiri, Muhammad bin Tughlaq renamed Devagiri as Daulatabad. Daulak means wealth. He said that Devagiri was overflowing with wealth, was a very prosperous city, and hence Muhammad bin Tughlaq is said to have renamed Devagiri as Daulatabad. Daulat means wealth. So basically, Muhammad bin Tughlaq in 1327 shifted his capital from Delhi to Devagiri or Daulatabad. Why? He argued that uh, Daulatabad was centrally located. He argued that it will enable him to have a better control over all parts of his kingdom. So basically, Muhammad bin Tughlaq argued that since Devagiri or Daulatabad is centrally located, Muhammad bin Tughlaq argued that that will enable him to have better control over all parts of India and particularly over southern India. Particularly over southern India. At a point. So basically, citing that as a reason, Muhammad bin Tughlaq shifted his capital. He also gave one more reason. Basically, invasions on India happened from the northwest. Most of the invasions on India happened from the northwest, and it is during these invasions that Delhi had to face the brunt of the invasions. So the invaders, whosoever came from northwest, they mostly attacked and destroyed the cities of North India, and Delhi being the capital, it became the target for most of the invaders. So basically, during the 12th and the 13th century AD, Delhi was frequently invaded and attacked by the Mongols. In 12th, 13th, and even in the 14th century AD, Delhi was frequently attacked and destroyed, was invaded and targeted by the Mongols. Mongols, these are basically the tribes of Central Asia. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq argued that shifting of his capital from Delhi to Devagiri would prevent Mongol attacks on the capital. Basically, he argued that he shifted the capital to prevent the frequent attacks of the Mongols on his capital. So, citing both of these as reasons, he carried out shifting of the capital from Delhi to Devagiri in 1327 AD. This is what happened. So the idea is not that bad. The plan to shift the capital is not bad because indeed Daulatabad is centrally located, and therefore it would enable the ruler to have better control over all parts of the kingdom. So as far as the plan is concerned, there is absolutely nothing wrong in it. So the shifting of capital was completed in 1327 AD. But the point is, the officers who also moved along with the king to Daulatabad began to pressurize the king to once again shift the capital back to Delhi. Point is, along with the king, the nobles, the officers also moved to Daulatabad, but the officers of Muhammad bin Tughlaq could not get adjusted to the climatic conditions of Daulatabad. So there was not uh, proper infrastructure available in Daulatabad, and therefore the officers of Muhammad Tughlaq began to pressurize him to once again shift the capital back to Delhi. So because of the pressure coming from his officers, within a few years, Muhammad bin Tughlaq shifted back his capital to Delhi. So the point is, the plan to shift the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad is not a bad idea at all. But Muhammad bin Tughlaq could not stick to his idea because of the pressure coming from his own officers. Muhammad bin Tughlaq shifted back the capital to Delhi. But this whole exercise of shifting the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad once again back to Delhi costed lot of money to the exchequer. So the point is, during this entire exercise, uh, there was a lot of it costed a lot of money to the exchequer. Whole exercise of shifting the capital twice resulted in lot of spending of money. So basically, the first experiment carried out by Muhammad bin Tughlaq ended up in a disaster. I already told you the plan was good. In fact, most of the plans that were most of the experiments carried out by Muhammad bin Tughlaq were good plans, but when it comes to implementation, most of the plans failed. Point. Most of the plans failed because of improper implementation. That's the point which I'm trying to convey. So take a look at the first experiment. The change of capital ended up in a disaster. It costed a lot of money to the exchequer. Then in 1329, Muhammad bin Tughlaq came up with one more experiment called token currency experiment. In 1329, Muhammad bin Tughlaq came up with another experiment called token currency experiment. So basically, uh, in 1329, there was a shortage of silver. So back in those days, coins were minted with precious and semi-precious metals. So say for example, coins were minted in gold, coins were minted in silver, coins were minted in copper, etc., etc. So basically, back in those days, coins were minted in precious and semi-precious metals. But in 1329, there was a shortage of silver, and therefore Muhammad bin Tughlaq came up with an idea of minting copper coins, but with the value of a silver. So, for example, silver gold coin is say 100 rupees, silver coin is at 10 rupees, copper coin is say 1 rupee. So basically, he came up with the token currency experiment. What we are using in the present times are token currency only. So for example, we have a note, a currency issued by Reserve Bank of India, which is basically a token currency. So if the RBI issues the currency with the number 100 on it, it means the value of the currency is 100 rupees. But in case if RBI issues another paper currency with 1000 written on it, we accept it as a 1000 rupee currency. So the point is, what we are using in present time is basically an artificial currency. The point. Token currency only. Similar such experiment was carried out by Muhammad bin Tughlaq way back in 1329. So since there was a shortage of silver, he sought to give an artificial value of silver to the copper coin. So there were copper coins with 1 written on it. Just for the sake of example, I am giving it to you. It means that the copper coin with the number 1 on it val was declared as equal in value of 1 rupee. But instead of silver coins, he started issuing copper coins, but with the value of silver. Coin is copper coin, but the value that was written on it is the value of a silver coin. What we call this as? We refer to this as a token currency. What we are using the present times, that is the paper currency, is nothing but the token currency one. Similar such experiment was uh, similar such a plan was experimented by Muhammad bin Tughlaq in 1329. So the point is, he came up with the token currency experiment. He planned to give the value of a silver to a copper coin. And he came up with this experiment because of a shortage of precious metals such as silver. Plan absolutely is a solid plan. There is absolutely no problem in the plan. But the point is, this plan can succeed only when there is only one authority to issue the coins, like how we have RBI, the only authority to issue the coins. If I and you, if we start issuing currency on our own, then the value of the currency would fall. That is exactly what happened during Muhammad bin Tughlaq's time period. The plan per se is not bad, but the point is that this plan would succeed when there is only one authority to issue the coins. But the point is, Muhammad bin Tughlaq could not prevent the circulation of a counterfeit currency. So after this token currency experiment, so uh, the the economy began to flood with the began to flood with the fake currency. It began to flood with the counterfeit currency. So basically, it is said that uh, every the house of every goldsmith had turned into a mint. Basically, the goldsmiths, the jewelry makers, they too started minting the coins. They started making the copper coins, but with the value of a silver. So basically, this token currency experiment was implemented in 1329. The idea behind this experiment was to overcome the shortage of silver. So the point is, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, he started issuing the copper coins, but with the value of a silver coin. This experiment could have succeeded had he taken steps to prevent circulation of a counterfeit currency. But unfortunately, he could not prevent. As a result, the entire economy began to flood, the entire market began to flood with counterfeit currency. This was because every house of a goldsmith had turned into a mint. The goldsmith began to mint the copper coins but with the value of a silver. As a result, the value of the coin fell sharply in the markets. So the value of the currency devaluated. The value of the currency fell in the market at a point. So as a result, it created lot of chaos in the market. People had money, but they were not in a position to purchase anything in the market because there was no one to accept those currency. The point is, the circulation of a counterfeit currency in the market increased so much that people had currency with them, but the sellers were not ready to accept those currency. As a result, it created utter chaos in the market. So finally, the point is, Muhammad bin Tughlaq realized that his experiment had failed. He withdrew the token currency and compensated the people with silver. The people who had uh, the copper currency with them, they were depositing the copper currency with the king and were exchanging with the silver. And this further depleted the royal treasury. So basically, Muhammad bin Tughlaq realized that his experiment had failed, and therefore he decided to compensate the people. He started exchanging the copper currency with the silver currency. That is, he was taking back the copper currency and was giving back a silver currency to the people. This entire exercise further depleted the royal treasury. It caused a further strain on the royal treasury. So basically, this plan was not bad, but the way it was implemented undoubtedly was a failed execution. The second experiment that was carried out in 1329 also ended up as a failed, it ended up in a failure. The third experiment is what we call as a Karachil expedition. Karachil expedition, which was carried out in 1330 AD. Karachil is basically a region located in the foothills of the Himalayas. Karachil is a region located in the foothills of the Himalayas. Possibly it is located towards Tibet or in Kashmir. We are not very clear about this region, but the point is the Karachil region is located the foothills of the Himalayas. So, with the aim of expanding his kingdom, Muhammad bin Tughlaq had sent 10,000 soldiers to Karachil to occupy that area. Basically, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, with a view to occupy the Karachil region, had sent about 10,000 soldiers to the Karachil region. But even this experiment had ended up in a disaster. This was because of the 10,000 soldiers sent to Karachil region, only a few returned back to Delhi. Of the 10,000 soldiers sent to Karachil region to occupy it, of the 10,000 soldiers, only a few returned back to Delhi. A majority of the soldiers sent to Karachil died. They died not due to wars. They died not during the course of the war. They died because of adverse terrain, because of difficult terrain and adverse weather conditions. Point is, the soldiers from Delhi could not get adjusted to the cold climatic regions of Himalayan region, and due to the difficult terrain and adverse weather conditions, a majority of the soldiers sent to occupy Karachil region died. So basically, even this experiment ended up in a disaster. It ended up in a disaster because more than 9,500 soldiers died in this particular exercise. Of the 10,000 soldiers that were sent, more than 9,500 died, only about 500 returned back to Delhi. So basically, this experiment that was carried out in 1300 AD also ended up in a disaster. So the point is, the plan to occupy Karachil is not a bad plan, because any ruler would want to occupy newer territories. So therefore, the plan to occupy Karachil is not a bad plan, but the point is the execution was undoubtedly not very proper. So possibly the point is the ruler, that is Muhammad bin Tughlaq, should have taken adequate steps before sending his troops to the Karachil region, but that was not the case. He just sent some 10,000 soldiers. Of them, only 500 returned back. Most of the soldiers, they died not in wars, they died due to adverse weather conditions. The point. So this experiment was this experiment uh, this experiment strained the empire's resources further. This experiment once again strained the empire's resources further. Further, it resulted in further cause. It resulted in further loss of uh, uh, money to Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Then the fourth experiment is what we call as Khorasan ambition. And this experiment was carried out in 1332 AD, Khorasan. Khorasan is basically a very strategically important area located in Iran, Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan border region. Khorasan is a very strategically important region located between Iran, Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan. So there, this region is. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq wanted to occupy the Khorasan region. because he believed that anyone who have control over Khorasan region can efficiently prevent attacks on India. Take a look at this map once again. So basically, Khorasan is located somewhere here. The point. Khorasan is located somewhere here. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq wanted to occupy this Khorasan region because he believed that anyone who have control over this Khorasan region can effectively prevent attacks on India, because most of the invasions happened from the Khorasan region. So he believed that by having control over this Khorasan region, he can effectively prevent attacks on India. And therefore, to occupy this Khorasan region, he raised 1 lakh army to occupy this Khorasan region. It is said Muhammad bin Tughlaq raised 1 lakh army. It is said that the army was given proper training. It is also said that the army was paid 1 year salary in advance. Soldiers of the army, uh, which was specifically raised to occupy the Khorasan region, was also paid 1 year salary in advance. The point is, Khorasan is a very strategically important region. The plan to occupy Khorasan is not a bad plan. In fact, Muhammad bin Tughlaq is said to have raised 1 lakh army specifically for the purpose of occupying the Khorasan region. The members of the army, that is the soldiers of his army, also given proper training. He said that the soldiers of his army were also paid 1 year salary in advance. But the point is, uh, when the time had come to go for the conquest of Khorasan, Muhammad bin Tughlaq is said to have given up his plans. Point is, after paying 1 year salary in advance, when the time had come for the conquest of Khorasan, Muhammad bin Tughlaq is said to have given up his plans. He said that in 1332, few rebellions happened within his kingdom. So therefore, Muhammad bin Tughlaq thought that he should first suppress the internal rebellions before going ahead with the Khorasan conquest. So therefore, the point is, the army was raised. The members of the army were paid 1 year salary in advance. But before the point is, the time for the conquest of Khorasan had come. Before the conquest of Khorasan, Muhammad bin Tughlaq is said to have given up his plans. It is said that basically it is said that there were few domestic rebellions within his kingdom. Muhammad bin Tughlaq first wanted to set right the situation in India before going ahead with the plan to occupy Khorasan. So therefore, he gave up his Khorasan ambition. The point is, he made the plan, raised an army, he paid 1 year salary in advance. But before actually the time for the invasion of Khorasan had come, Muhammad bin Tughlaq is said to have given up his plan. So this Khorasan ambition is also said to have costed the royal treasury quite dearly. This was because 1 lakh army is no small army, and that too, the members of the army were also paid 1 year salary in advance. But since he could not, since the ruler did not go ahead with the conquest of Khorasan, it is said that uh, uh, this Khorasan ambition is said to have pushed the point is, it is said to have caused great distress uh, within economic distress in the empire. It is said to have caused great economic distress in the empire. So this experiment basically also failed. Uh, it also failed. It was also a failed experiment. The point. The fifth is another experiment called Doab taxation. Doab means the land between two waters. Ab means water, do is number two. Doab means the land between two waters. So basically, this experiment was carried out by Muhammad ibn Tughluq in 1333 and 34. So by this time, because of his various experiments, the entire royal treasury had become uh, the point is by as a result of all of these experiments, uh, his royal treasury had got emptied. The royal treasury had got emptied, and therefore, with a view to once again fill up the treasury, Muhammad bin Tughlaq came up with a new taxation policy in the Doab region. Basically, with a view to fill up his treasury, Muhammad bin Tughlaq came up with a new taxation policy in the Doab region. So basically, Doab region, this is a very fertile region between river Ganga and river Yamuna. This Doab region is a very fertile region between river Ganga and river Yamuna. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq was of the view that since this region is a very fertile region, thought that the people have uh, since the region, since the soil of this region is very fertile, since the productivity in agriculture is also very high in this region, Muhammad bin Tughlaq thought to impose additional taxes on the people of the Doab region. Reason being, by this time the entire royal treasury got emptied. So, with a view to once again fill up the treasury, he came up with a new taxation policy in the Doab region. Basically, he sought to impose additional taxes on the people of the Doab region. This he did with a view to fill up his treasury, which by this time had got emptied. But what was the result? But unfortunately, in 1333 and 34, uh, uh, monsoons failed, and as a result, uh, famine like conditions began to appear in the Doab region. At the same time, 1333-34, monsoons failed, and as a result, famine like conditions began to appear in the Doab region. So the people were already facing hardships as a result of famine like condition, but the the officers of Muhammad bin Tughlaq began to harass the people of the Doab region to pay additional taxes as well. Already, the people of the Doab region were under great stress due to the famine-like conditions. But the officers of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, uh, uh, they continued to pressure the people of the Doab region to pay additional taxes as well. So the point is, the people of the Doab region, unable to bear with the taxation burden, revolted against Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So basically, the point is imposing additional taxes on the people is not a bad idea, particularly on the people who have enough. Imposing additional taxes on them is not a bad idea. But the point is the timing of implementation of uh, this experiment was perhaps a bad one. The point is, collecting additional taxes from the people is not a bad idea, particularly from those people who have enough money. But the point is, the timing of this experiment is undoubtedly not a correct time, because this experiment was carried out in 1333-34. Unfortunately, in the same year, monsoons failed and famine-like conditions began to appear. People of the Doab region were already under distress, but the officers of Muhammad bin Tughlaq continued to put pressure on the people of the region, the Doab region, to pay up the taxes. So unable to bear with the unable to bear with the exploitation uh, of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, the people of the Doab region revolted. So the people of the Doab region, uh, they, they, uh, they carried out a massive revolt against Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So in the same year, Muhammad bin Tughlaq realized his mistake of collecting or imposing additional taxes on the people. So he is said to have ordered his troops to stop collecting taxes. But by that time itself, the entire damage was done. So the whole point which I'm is even this experiment ended up in a failure. It ended up in a disaster. So basically, the five experiments carried out by Muhammad, all of them they failed. They failed not because the idea was not good. They failed because of improper implementation. Now let us take a look at the political developments. I told you the Tughlaqs, I'm sorry, the Khaljis. Just take a look at this map. The Khaljis, uh, particularly Alauddin Khilji, he occupied whole of North India, but South Indian territories, though he defeated the rulers of South India, he did not occupy or he did not annex the South Indian territories to Delhi Sultanate. This is what we have just seen. But Muhammad bin Tughlaq reversed this policy of the Tughlaqs. Muhammad bin Tughlaq basically reversed the policy of the Tughlaqs. So after becoming the ruler, Muhammad bin Tughlaq annexed even the South Indian territories to Delhi Sultanate. Basically, after becoming the ruler, Muhammad bin Tughlaq is said to have annexed even the South Indian territories to Delhi Sultanate. This is what happened. So the point is, what was the result? Within a short span of time, many rebellions broke out in South India against Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So basically, Muhammad bin Tughlaq kept moving from one part of South India to another part to suppress all of these rebellions, but ultimately failed. And within a few years, the entire South Indian territories began to declare independence. This is what happened. The whole point which I'm trying to convey is Muhammad bin Tughlaq was not a very pragmatic ruler like that of Alauddin Khilji. Alauddin Khilji, though he occupied the South Indian territories, did not annex, though he defeated the South Indian rulers, did not annex the South Indian territories to Delhi Sultanate. This is what we have already seen. But the point is, unlike Alauddin Khilji, Muhammad bin Tughlaq reversed those policies. Muhammad bin Tughlaq began to annex South Indian territories to Delhi Sultanate. And this decision undoubtedly began to cost him dearly. This was because within a few years, the uh, South Indian rulers began to revolt against Tughlaq. Muhammad bin Tughlaq, on the other hand, kept moving from one part of South India to other to suppress these rebellions, but ultimately he failed. And within a short span of time, the whole of Deccan and South India declared independence from the Delhi Sultans. Within a short span of time, the whole of Deccan and southern part of India declared complete independence from the Delhi Sultanate. So this was undoubtedly a result of a lack of foresight for Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Undoubtedly. I hope I am clear. So that's about Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So Muhammad bin Tughlaq, definitely he was and he was an intelligent man. He had knowledge, but what he lacked was wisdom. So because of his failed experiments, because of his uh, uh, unwise policy of going ahead with territorial conquest of South India, uh, costed him dearly. Uh, all his experiments and his failure to keep his hold over South India said to have resulted in the disintegration of the Delhi Sultanate. That's the point. So the whole point which I'm trying to convey is it is during Muhammad bin Tughlaq's time period, whole of South India declared independence. So it is during Muhammad bin Tughlaq's time period, gradually the disintegration of the Delhi Sultanate began. So his rule is considered to be one of the reasons for the ultimate is considered to be one of the reasons for the downfall of the Tughlaq rule. So that's all about Muhammad Tughlaq. So this topic is very important. So many times, in fact, in the previous exams, questions were asked from the topic, and there is a possibility of a question being asked even in a future exam. That's all for today. See you in the next class.